What's up, gang? Welcome to The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mershazde. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now listen, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mershazde, and boy, do we have a special guest. Oh my gosh, Christine Sperber is in the house. What's up?
Hey, Darius. How are you?
Oh, man. I try to see how fast I can do my intros, so I'm getting pretty quick. Man, I'm so pumped that you're here. Do you mind if I do a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll get rocking?
Absolutely not. Go ahead. As long as I don't have to housekeep, I'm happy.
Let's do that, man. So for listeners that are new to the show, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. People are living their passions and those creating greatness in the world and doing so despite the odds. And Christine is neither short of passion nor greatness. So I met Christine a few weeks ago at GOT. We all know I love my GOT and I like talking about it all the time. And what Christine doesn't know is that I'm super freaking picky on who I bring on the show, especially now because the show actually people actually listen to the show now. And so I cherry picked a couple. I interviewed Michael Zagaris yesterday, who was the photographer, who is freaking amazing. And I was like, oh, I got to interview Michael. And I got to interview Christine. So I'm so excited that you decided to come on the show. You had such an interesting story. And I was like, man, I want to hang out with her. And then we got to hang out even, we got to bro out, sister out a little bit, like at the event. So that was cool. And I was like, oh, we're going to have some fun on the show. So welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. You're one of your colleagues, Mr. Chip Conley, is a former guest on the show. So here we are getting to chop it up and learn about you and your world and all the amazingness that you're doing. So, yeah, gosh, I'm so excited. I want to give your formal bio and then I'd love it if you wouldn't mind kind of giving our audience a little bit of your origin story. Does that work for you?
That sounds perfect.
I'm all about I always ask permission for lots of things, and then I just then we get after it. So Christine is the co-founder and CXO, Chief Experience Officer at MEA, the Modern Elder Academy, down in Todos Santos, Mexico, as well as they're building their new campus in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She's also a former pro snowboarder. We're going to be talking about how she came up when the pro snowboarding was just coming up, and she was made a name for herself in that arena until she moved into the new world of experience officer and doing all the amazing things that she did and is doing at MEA. So with that said, man, I'd love to, if you wouldn't mind, giving us a little bit of your origin story. I obviously have heard it, but I'd love for you to kind of enlighten our audience on how you came up in the world before weren't just born a pro snowboarder in CXO. It happened through trials and tribulations and so much amazingness. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, give us a little bit of your origin story.
You're such a good hype man. I just want to bring you with me everywhere. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was born in New Jersey. Oldest of four sisters. We kind of went on ski vacations, but for those of you who know skiing, you just have to do it all the time to get good, right? And snowboarding has a much faster learning curve. You really pay in the early days, but then you can kind of, yeah, right? Together, feet together on one plank, there's payment, there's punishment, there can be. So I was in college, I saw snowboarders. I was on a ski trip in college, saw snowboarders, and thought, I have to do that. I was, to backtrack a little bit, my gift from my parents for my high school graduation was an outward bound trip to the Pacific Northwest. So here I am, this East Coast kid. My sister likes to say that my mother was the last in a long line of classy women, and then came the four of us girls. So... I never saw my grandmother without hose and heels and done, right? We're just not really in that era anymore. And I'm certainly not that woman. So here I go off on this outward bound trip. I deboard in Seattle. I see a woman my grandmother's age kind of walk through the terminal in hiking boots. And I was like, what is this world? So this first experience to the American West really lit me on fire. And then, it always felt like I was suffocating in classrooms, and Outward Bound is experiential education. So it was life changing on a number of different levels, kind of opening my ideas to the possibilities. So then I go to college. I see these snowboarders. I have to be a part of it. Next year, I moved to Breckenridge, Colorado, started snowboarding. And, snowboarding was like everything, this progressive innovation sprint, just like sparks of brilliance all over the place. And I got to be a part of that early culture of snowboarding. That I just don't think it would be possible today at 19 to begin to snowboard and be a pro. Like, they're minting these little kids. They go to snowboard academies. It's their whole lives. So it was a really special time, really lucky entry point into snowboard world.
That's so cool. So I have a question. So first of all, did you do like Knowles, or did you do like the Outward Bound program? Because I know they're kind of like, they're two different programs similar in their curriculum.
I did Outward Bound.
Okay, my sister did Knowles. Now what's funny is, and I meant to say this to you when when we met. I'm like, you're like an East Coaster that reminds me of a West Coaster, right? I don't know, if, like you don't have the. I mean, like, look, I wouldn't want to mess with you in like a dark alley. You got a little Jersey in you, right? but but you have like this like laid back kind of like Cali vibe, right? Like you got a little. Have you been accused of that before in your life?
I mean, the truth is I've spent more time in the West now than I did in the East. I moved when I was 19. I'm 53 now, right? So if you look at just my timeline, more of it's been out of New Jersey than in New Jersey, although I still tap back there all the time. My sisters are there. My family's there. I'm part of a gigantic Italian family. And so, I still have that. We had one of our guests at MEA say, of the 4 partners, we're 3 co-founders and 4 partners, that I'm the only one that he would be afraid to take a punch from.
Yeah. I can see that. The reason I say that is I'm born and bred Cali, and I'm always being accused of being from like New York, New Jersey. Like, people are always like, Darius, like, I was in college, like, oh, you remind me of, you look like a New Yorker. You act like a New Yorker. And I'm like, oh. So I get the opposite.
I see that. You definitely have that New York intensity. Like, let's get this done.
Yeah.
Don't fuck around. Let's go.
Dude, born and raised in SoCal near the beach. I will tell you this though. I didn't feel like I fit in there. I was always like, man, fuck these people. So
I really did feel the same in New Jersey. I mean, I had wonderful experiences there at a really privileged childhood, but the same, like, I just couldn't wait. And that Outward Bound trip was kind of like, wow, all this stuff I've been dreaming about is real. Yeah. Although I did fantasize about growing up in a commune in California. I thought that was so bohemian and wonderful. And then as an adult, especially when I moved to Baja, I met a lot of people who'd grown up in communes, and it wasn't exactly the fantasy that I had.
Yeah. Which is kind of funny, like, where you've gone with that. So where'd you go to college? Where'd you get educated?
I went to Western New England College in Springfield, Massachusetts. Darius, I faked my report cards in school for years, like pre-Photoshop, cutting out little, like, the squares and putting in new scores so my parents didn't know how poorly I was doing. I was, an athlete. I felt suffocated in classrooms. Always been a learner. I've always been a reader, but classroom situation didn't work for me. So, and I tested well. So we got to kind of the end of the line in high school, and I sent in all these applications, and, that was not a successful thing. And then
they didn't take the cut and paste report card. I'm guessing.
No, they did not. They had the real transcripts, and those did not hold up through the application process. So I ended up at Western New England for a year, and then dropped out and moved to Ski Town and found my own education.
That's so cool. Well, what's funny is, like, it's I was talking to a friend of mine, and this is, I think, more prominent in other cultures. I mean, I grew up like half Persian, half Italian, so I'm like, Persians are like the Italians of the Middle East, but they really are. But like in that culture, it's like your parents want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And I remember I was like sophomore year of college. And I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this? I mean,
Right.
I'm like you, like I'm pretty like you're sharp, right? Like I can learn pretty quickly when I want to. But I was like a solid B student because I was like, I can do fucking almost nothing and get B. This is, or I have to try hard to get the A. And I'm like, I'm like C plus B, do nothing. Okay, I'll do that.
You
But like I would
figured out 80-20 way back, right?
totally total Pareto's principle. I was like, I can do almost zero and get a fucking B minus. This seems good. That, by the way, does not work well to get you into college. So I used sport. Then I realized I was a really good athlete. So I was like a wrestler, and so then I feel like, I call up the coach and I'm like, hey, how did I not get into this place? Like they got me in. Like I was a walk on, but anyway, so it's interesting. Yeah, like I almost left too. I ended up toughing it out, which was I was right. My parents convinced me to stick with it. They're like, oh, it's something to fall back on. I'm like, Mom, Dad, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Like I don't need it. There's nothing to fall back on. I'm going to work for myself. So I was right, but I did muscle it through. So you're in Breckenridge, which like tell us about that, because I mean I've had a lot of friends that take their like sabbatical years in their like 20s and they're like, fuck it, I'm gonna go be a bartender in Breckenridge and just like go be a ski bum. And I was a person that was not doing any of that stuff. So I'd love to hear about your experience. You were 19, 20, you're like, all right, I'm out. I'm gonna go do me. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. And my parents were like, good, you go do that, but you are totally on your own. And I was the first person in my family to do anything like that for some generations.
Yeah.
So 1989, moved to Colorado. God, it was just amazing. I just can't even capture what it was like. When I think about ski towns in the 80s and the early 90s, it's the thing that makes me viscerally understand the emotion of nostalgia. Like the yearning for a thing that is gone. It was just wildness. There were, I remember walking into a bar in Breckenridge, probably my second winter there, maybe even in the summer. The summers were even more unhinged. And I walked into a bar, I was probably 19 years old. And every head turned when I walked in, and it was probably 50 men in the bar. There just weren't a lot of women. And here I am, like 19 years old, female. I just walked out. I was like, that's just not going well. That's not a good idea of how to spend my afternoon, my evening. But I mean, people really living their passions, everyone hiking, climbing, it's not like there wasn't status. Like coming from New Jersey, status was so important, right? The right school on the sticker on the back of the Mercedes station wagon, the right job, the right clothes, the right clubs, that all mattered. And it's not that there wasn't a series of status symbols in a ski town, but they were more about like, what are you climbing? How far are you hiking? How much are you skiing? How many days are you skiing? Are you, are you really getting out and after it? Are you really living kind of fully? And I just loved it. I loved those early days.
Yeah,
and I ended up staying for 32 years.
Wow. So let me ask you a question. And this is I'm totally going like I'm AWOL on you here. Are you friends with Steven Kotler? Do you know him?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I've been a fan, arm's length fan for a while. Chip knows him. I've loved his books. West of Jesus was foundational for me. And then the new book, Nar Country, just came out, right, about becoming an extreme skier in his 50s. We have a plan to do a workshop with Steven at our new campus in Santa Fe. He has agreed to do that with us. So I cannot wait to meet him. So
you guys have so much in common. So I got an advanced copy of Nar Country and interviewed him on it, which is it's a fun interview. But when you're talking about, first of all, like if you read that book, then you already know what I'm saying. Like, dude, you guys have a lot in common. You should connect with him. I'll even make an intro. But if he's going to be at MEA, then you guys will connect. You guys have a lot of overlap and a lot of like the way you talk about Breckenridge is the way he talks about his experience. It's really interesting. You guys need to connect. Anyway, sorry. Back to your story. So you're in Breckenridge. You're 19. There's a lot of dudes. There's one of you. You're like, It's so fun. I'm fucking with you. But yeah, no, I mean, what? How did that segue into like professional snowboarding? Because I mean, I'm sure there was other women there that were like experiencing the outdoors that didn't become world renowned, snowboarders. How did that happen for you?
Actually, though, a lot of us did. That kind of
Oh,
freshman class, we really got to step up. We were snowboarding every day, and there's no better way to become a good snowboarder than to snowboard every day. I remember moments of being angry that the lifts had closed for the day, because what was I going to do until they opened again? Like all this time. So I think it was just kind of passion and then practical, right? So coming up in a ski town, I was amazed, so happy to kind of hit this pinnacle of ski town life. Like I was a waitress, right? That is the greatest thing in a ski town. I was pocketing a couple $100 in cash a night. I had all day to go snowboarding. The thing about being a waitress, Darius, is no one calls you afterwards to say like, hey, did you whatever? Like there's no
yeah.
follow up. Your responsibility ends at the end of the shift. And restaurant family, like that concept of flow that we talk about in sport and all kinds of things, you can get that. There's kind of a group flow in the most amazing service environments. I mean, we would run during these shifts, 2.5 hour wait out the door, slinging spaghetti at this place called Pasta J's that still exists today. And there were a lot of us young athletes in there, but the idea that I might be able to pay my rent without going and running through a 7-8 hour shift after snowboarding all day, I was like, all right, I want some of this. I want some of this money. I want someone to pay me to ride my snowboard. And when it happened, it was pretty glorious. And it got, pre-social media, for good or bad. I think it's great that young athletes get to kind of own their own brand these days. But at the same time, being able to travel around the world without it all being recorded every moment, we got to be dipshits in a really young and lighthearted way, not under a microscope.
I mean, so I'm a little younger, but we're still this, and we're both Gen X, and so I was in high school in the early '90s, right? You just finished high school in the late '80s,
Yes.
and so it like that was all the same shit as far as I'm concerned. And the best part of it, I would say, I will not even listen. There's things that we did that I know would have been on social media that I would be like embarrassed about now, like really embarrassed. Like,
absolutely.
And I'm like, thank God, like that shit would have like, that would have like hung, that would have been stuff that like, I'll just put it this way. There's like politicians whose shit that comes out now that you're like, dude, really, bro? Yeah, me and my friends did some of that stuff. And so I'm like, I mean, I was 14, 15 years old, right? And there wasn't, and guess what? I'm not telling you what it is, but I'm just going to tell you that I'm happy it's not out there. At the same time, like, there's a leverage people get with social media, right? Like if you're a
Absolutely.
pro athlete, like there you get massive leverage that like pro athletes 30 years ago just didn't have, And so it kind of started and ended there. You couldn't really turn it into much afterwards. There was no personal brand. The personal brand, I mean, there was maybe for like the best of the best. I mean, I'm thinking like Warren Miller's like, movies, like the guys in those movies, some of those guys had personal brands. But it's not like now. Now there's people with personal brands where you're like, this guy's like kind of mediocre at their sport, but they're like really entertaining and they have a personal brand. So there's kind of something lost. I mean, my sense is that, I guess a question for you is, if you could go back and have the tools of today versus the anonymity of not people recording you doing stupid shit, which would you choose?
God, that's such a great question. If I got to take the wisdom that I have from a lifetime of experience as a 54-year-old and transport no, I just have to be a 17-year-old on a global
press
stage.
The button. Yeah, you press the button. You get Instagram, and you have your abilities you had at 20, or you get no Instagram, and you get to have fun and never get to see it in the future. Just live off your memories.
I think that I might take no Instagram. I think I might at 20. As powerful as it is, I don't know that I had the tools at that point that the exposure would have done me or the world any good. I feel quite fortunate that I got to grow up pre social media.
Yeah. All right.
I was a hothead. I really had some hot-headed moments, and I'm really grateful for the years I've had to kind of learn and process, figure out that space between stimulus and response. Those are important tools, and I
Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
them maybe more than many people.
Yeah. And you're Italian, so I don't fuck with you. Like, boom. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how long were you like what was it like coming up in that era? Like you guys got to go do a bunch of crazy stuff, but I mean, you were, like a world respected, what was it, half pipe? Is that right?
Yep. I competitively I rode half pipe. Um, for fun, and to this day I will ride powder or pretty much anything anytime because it's just a good time to be on a snowboard. But I think
Yeah.
the thing that anyone was willing to pay me for was to ride half pipe, um, which is still kind of just a mind-blowing sentence. I got paid to ride a half pipe. Like, how lucky can you be? um, so what was it like? We traveled to events, we did photo shoots, there were um, magazine trips that would put together articles about different trips. So it was a lot of travel with different pods of people, and I'm really not doing a great job of explaining how wonderful it was.
No,
But,
no, no,
you
no,
know,
no. You're good. Don't worry about it.
I mean, to think about, like, at one point I had an unlimited travel budget, which meant if I were invited somewhere, I could go. The manufacturer that I rode for, which was Morrow Snowboards at the time, would cover my travel expenses. I would get home from a trip. There'd often be a FedEx envelope waiting with tickets to the next trip. Sometimes I didn't know where I was going until I got that envelope, and it was exhausting and celebratory and you know unbelievable. It was an unbelievable couple of years. I during this same time of competing in the winter, it was really important to be on summer snow. And so some people would go down the southern hemisphere. There was also these camps that happened up at Timberline on Mount Hood in Oregon. And
Hmm.
I wrangled my way into being a coach at one of the camps. And that was great because you just stay fresh, and the progress for the entire season would really happen at these camps on glacial snow. And I went from being a coach to on-hill manager to the camp director. And then we went out and did this GM search. I think my fourth year there, where the two founders were ready to kind of step back into board positions. And we did a pretty good search, and no one was right. It was the time where it was big enough business that we really started to look at kind of some captain of industry types. And they were all like they'd dye their hair blue for the interview. I really get you kids. And it was like, no, you really fucking don't. Like, you are going to crush our culture. Holy shit. And so kind of watching the parade of people that wanted to step into leadership when snowboarding became big business was the thing that pushed me into, like, I've got to figure this out, because what makes this so special is the culture and this spirit of innovation and the authenticity. Like, action sports has this really, like, hair trigger bullshit meter that's so special and needs to be preserved at all costs. And so I moved from, I was still getting paid as an athlete, and moved into being the GM of the camp. It's the largest snowboard camp in the world.
Were you
And
doing that? So were you doing that while you were still a pro? So this was
yes,
not like, okay. So winters, you're going in all over the place. Summers, you're the GM of the Mount Hood. Is it that there's an academy up there, right? Mount Hood Academy. That's like a boarding school that people go to that are like pro skiers and snowboarders. Is that the same place, or is that different?
it's all kind of part of the same soup of people, but High Cascade was the camp that I ran.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
And so, like, when I was coaching and doing the on-hill management, that I would still go and be an athlete, a competitive athlete in the winter. When I stepped into the GM role, I sunset my contracts and thanked all my sponsors for, letting me have such a great life of traveling around the world for the while, and then moved to Bend, Oregon into like a desk job, which was one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life,
Wait,
was
did you do?
accept a desk job.
Were you injured or something, or was there? Did something? I mean, most people don't like just like bow out of a pro athlete gig to just go to management.
I know. I wasn't injured. I'd
Oh
always
shit! No
known.
way.
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to work on the business side of it. I knew I had,
Mm.
all of a year of college behind me. And so when that door opened, I really kind of pushed my way through it and thought like, here, I can't miss this opportunity both to serve this camp, protect this culture, but, it was a big opportunity for me to get in there and learn.
How long did you do that for?
I was a GM for a couple years and then ended up moving back to Colorado after a few years in Oregon. Really fun years of deep innovation and working with the most passionate people who know how to really play and be great athletes and make a difference in the world in their own kind of purpose and passion, right? And then went back to Ski Town, back to Breckenridge. And from there got recruited by Copper Mountain because the GM or the CEO at Copper Mountain, this man, David Barry, recognized way before many ski areas, many resorts, that the ski areas weren't doing a good job of onboarding snowboarders, right? So there's PSIA, which is Professional Ski Instructors of America. They do a great job of teaching people how to ski, but people don't want to learn how to snowboard. They want to be snowboarders, right?
Right.
And that's very different. And so David Barry pulled me out of camp world and said, come on over, let's figure this out at a resort level. How do we onboard snowboarders? How do we hire snowboarders? They had a philosophy at Copper when I started about the snowboard instructors that was, you can't fire them till you hire them. They just had no idea how to interact with the culture of snowboarders, and turned out to be a really fun program. We brought in a lot of great instructors and had a lot of fun for a couple of years.
What, like, obviously you were like, really, this was your world. What was it that made you say, hey, I'm out, I'm over snowboarding, I want to move on to something else? Because obviously there was a big transition that happened that I'd like to move to. And what was like the straw that broke the camel's back? Why did you decide like, hey, I don't want to be in this world anymore, I want to move to a different world?
It's a great and fair question, Darius. And to be clear, I still snowboard all the time. I snowboard for myself, but I made a decision that I didn't want to be part of the snowboard industry anymore. I didn't want it to be my whole world. I didn't want it to be my professional world. Snowboarding so focused on this kind of core demographic of 14-year-old boys, and it just got boring. There's such a richer audience of people out there that want to snowboard. So the combination of feeling really devalued as, I'm older. I was all of like my late 20s, older female snowboarder that no one was really interested in talking to, or very few people were interested in talking to, combined with I was traveling a lot, and I felt like I was missing being deeply embedded in my ski town community and being an everyday snowboarder. So I kind of wound back from an industry career and went back to living in a ski town and going up on the hill every single day.
And so I know that you kind of made a move to Mexico from here. Like, how did that
Yes.
come to be?
So I did a quick stint in residential real estate, which is like the only click above being a bartender or a waitress in a ski town is being a realtor, right? So I did that for a hot minute. Didn't really land for me. I liked it. I was successful at it. Loved putting first-time home buyers in homes, but just didn't feel like the right long-term. At the same time, one of my dear friends was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And so that kind of put a halt on me, investing any energy in real estate. I was spending a lot of time traveling to Salt Lake City to be with her. And just made me look at everything. Like, I just didn't want to waste another moment. And I promised her that I wouldn't waste another moment. Her name was Krista Moreau. She was an athlete, a skater. She raced motorcycles. She's the most amazing, most unafraid, most badass woman I've known in my entire life. And I really wanted to dedicate myself to, I guess, taking the opportunities that she wasn't going to have because we lost her to breast cancer. And that puts a really
Wow.
fine point on things, doesn't it? So I took
How
a
old was
sabbatical.
how
She
old
was
was she
young.
when she passed?
She was young. She was in her 30s.
Yeah, it's so funny, like when you see that, and like, and, I've lost people that were of all ages to cancer, and especially, but when people are young, you're like, hey man, like tomorrow's not promised, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's a gift that you got that gift, and and that's cool that you're honoring her. And so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but so from there, like obviously this happened with your friend, and you had this like kind of moment where you're like, hey, I'm gonna go honor her and honor myself, and so how did that how you're like, hey, I'm going to Mexico. I mean, I've almost done, I lived in Mexico last year for a month. And so I've almost done that a number of times because Mexico, there's a magic about Mexico where you're like, especially for people that get it. It's funny when people don't get Mexico, like I'll talk
Yeah.
to friends and I'm like, oh, I'm going to Mexico for a month. And they're like, is that safe? And I'm like, I mean, I'm not going to be doing deals with the cartel, so yeah, probably it's pretty safe. I mean, it's also, I'm not in the United States either, which has, it's probably safer here, relatively speaking. But yeah, how'd you pull the trigger on Mexico?
I'd long wanted to go to Baja. I don't know what it was. It just had this like magnetism to Baja, and it was someplace that I knew I could go, I could drive to, I could bring my dogs with me, and so we took a 5-month sabbatical to Baja. My husband and I packed up our truck and drove down with surfboards, and motorcycles, and mountain bikes, and I think about the evolution. When we first started driving down in 2008, it was like the lifted truck and all the things, and can we be ready to off-road? And now I think the coolest thing is like, can you drive the Baja in a Celica? Like, could you do it in a 1988 Celica? Like, how stripped down could you be? Could you do it in like a Cub 90, like one of those Honda motorcycles from the 70s? So I look at our evolution of that as well. But went down for 5 months, ended up just absolutely falling in love with the place and the pace and the people. I started volunteering to teach English in the community. We thought we'd travel all around Baja, and we ended up at a friend's kind of surf camp in a place called El Pescadero that he'd bought on a handshake years and years and years before. But he didn't have a title for years. All of the like nightmares that you hear about buying real estate in Mexico, like, it all should be true with this deal, and none of it is true. He bought it on a handshake. He said it was kind of the money in his pocket, and years later he got his title and everything was legitimate. So we lived on that property. We spent every day on the beach and working in the community, and we met a woman who was building a resort that's become quite big and quite famous at this point. Hit it off with her, agreed to come back and run communications and teach Pilates, like the tiniest little insertion to come back and do this. But it was like, I've seen this movie before where someone invites you to move to a foreign country that you've always loved and do a thing that you don't really know how to do. And you're definitely supposed to say yes. Right. So
Yeah.
we said yes. And from there, I mean, it's been 15 years in Baja of,
how big was can I ask a question? How big was the hotel when you got there, the one that you started working at?
We opened with 12 rooms, and we made the Condé Nast hot list that first year.
And was did she have experience in the hotel business? Was she from Mexico or from the States?
She's from the States, and we were all kind of like, we don't know what we're doing, right? We don't know this industry. We've all been travelers. We know how we like to be treated. But it was a new industry in a new country in a new language. Like, talk about jumping in with both feet, or that idea of like, if you really knew what you were signing up for, would you still sign up for? I'm glad that I was a little naive about what I was saying yes to, because it was an incredible learning curve. She didn't have a hospitality background either, so we just decided we'd run on golden rule. Like, how did we want to be treated? And it worked. And we had consultants telling us that we couldn't do it that way, that we were over servicing people, and that we were saying yes to too many things, and we were undercharging, and it all worked. It all worked.
Well, What was like the biggest thing? Like, if you were to look back and say, like, I'm glad I was naive, is what you just said a second ago.
Yeah.
What was the biggest thing where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe like the biggest like punch in the face? You're like, oh my God, that sucked. But like, and it maybe it didn't even suck. Maybe it was surprise, like biggest suck or biggest surprise that you're like, oh shit, I wish we knew that.
Probably the biggest one I can't talk about on your podcast because I ended up violating Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
Oh, oh damn.
You know, working in a second language, your non-native language, is exhausting. So, you know, that was a punch in the face. We're taking private Spanish lessons and getting up to speed. Traveler Spanish and working Spanish are very different. You know what, though? I think so. There is no day, and this is my experience in Mexico, so I won't, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but my experience in Mexico has been that like no day matters as much as today, and nothing matters as much as your family, right? And learning to manage a staff that had that set of values where today mattered, my family mattered. Sometimes they're not coming to work because grandma got sick. And I wasn't used to that level of commitment to family. I wasn't used to that level of commitment to presence. And what I learned along the way is that my ideas were wrong and that their ideas were better. And so I was the one that was kind of pulled in a new direction. Can I tell you one story that just like kicked my ass forever? So we had this 1 week at the hotel with just absolutely massive tip pool, like life-changing amount of money for these employees. And I wanted to be responsible with, what happens when someone's handed a lot of money without consequence. So I took a meeting with each one of the staff. We were probably 30 at that point. And I said, you earn this money. I'm so proud of you. Think about it. I want you to spend it wisely. Handing people like 10 and 20 times their weekly salary as a tip in cash. And every one of them sat with me and said, yes, Heffa, thank you. There were some tears. People were really touched. The entire staff went out that Friday afternoon. There was a man on staff who's a horse trainer whose daughter we're grooming her to be the GM of MEA now. I've met her when she was 8 and she's been with me ever since. So horse trainer and jockey. And the entire staff went to the horse race that Friday night, and they bet it all. They bet every bit of this money on the race. And I'm furious, right? As like someone who was raised to think about saving for retirement, just like furious at them. I thought, these children, how could they risk this? Here's the thing though, right? They won. They all won. They all doubled their money. They bet on their guy. They bet on Santos. He was their friend. And then the word trickled back that I was angry about the betting. And so the leader, kind of the spiritual leader of the staff, Anna Maria, whose daughter is Alondra, who's still with us and will be the GM at MEA in Baja, she came to me and she was like, Heffa, we hear you're angry. Why are you angry at us? Why are you mad? I said, I just can't believe that you would risk this kind of money. And she was like, but we won. We won and we had so much fun. I said, well, what if you didn't win? And we didn't win. It's okay. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I'm wrong here. They had an amazing experience. They supported their friend. There was no regret had they not won, and they doubled it. It was like, it snapped me into presence in a way that probably nothing else ever has.
Yeah. Well, it's also like this. I mean, yeah, it's just, there's two things I see. First of all, I'm like, easy come, easy go, right? Like, they're like, did they expect the 10 weeks or 20 weeks of pay for one tip pool? They're like, no. So it's not like there was this like hardcore grind for that. They just did their job and got way more than they normally got. And then the other part is, to your point, I think that's one thought that I had. Maybe I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then the second thought was, yeah, this thing with being present, right? We were talking about this before the show, where it's like, yeah, like all you asked is today, like you just got 10 extra money, like go put it all on black.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There was such a, like and innocence and immediacy about it. Like there was no other choice. This money came into my hands. There was an opportunity to bet it. We knew our guy was going to win because he's our guy. It was like in their minds, there was never even any risk. It was the thing to do. So, yeah, that was a fundamental change for me.
Wow. So, so fast forward, how did you get hooked up with MEA? I mean, so first of all, for the audience that doesn't know what MEA is, do you mind like kind of giving a little bit of background about MEA and what is it? And then how did you get hooked up with it?
All right. So MEA is fascinating. MEA was really the Chip Conley's brainchild, who is my business partner. Chip went to work at Airbnb in his 50s. I think he was 53 when he started there. He was recruited by the founders to come in as a mentor, ended up as, the SVP of global hospitality eventually. But they brought him in because they needed mentorship, right? So we're in this world right now, Darius. You see it all the time, I'm sure, where like money and power is cascading to the ever younger. But we don't have emotional intelligence. To our earlier point about, did we want our whole lives at 19 preserved forever on social media?
Yeah.
Think about who you were at that age. So kudos to those guys for recognizing that bringing in someone with not just business experience, but emotional intelligence and wisdom into the organization was helpful. They brought Chip in. He quickly realized that he was in a situation where he wasn't familiar with tech. And he made this switch to, not only am I going to be a mentor, but I'm going to be an intern. And I'm going to mentor privately and intern publicly. And he became a librarian basically to the entire company. People were coming to him for resources. And what they told him at that time was that they considered him a modern elder, that he was as curious as he was wise. And that curiosity was really the door opener. So fast forward, he writes a book about it, and we create a space in Baja for people to come and talk about all of these midlife transitions and how can we maintain curiosity as we move into, the second half of our life. How can we write that chapter intentionally? And what we learned so quickly. So we've got this whole curriculum and we've got these tools to help move people out of stuck places or to really consider where they want to go. But the power of it was having these conversations with like-hearted people. So convening a cohort of 20 to 30 people in similar places and having real conversations about what it's like to be in this stage of life, these challenges, has been the most transformative part. So that's MEA. We are all about unleashing wisdom in the world. It's not a didactic model, right? We do have a curriculum that we've written, but the most powerful part is bringing people together, creating the container to have these very powerful conversations.
And so, first of all, kudos to you guys. I mean, I met Chip 2009. So I'm from San Francisco, right? I lived in San Francisco, and he was he's kind of a local celebrity there a little bit, because he was running Joie de Vie hotels. And so for people that don't know about Chip, you had written a book called Peak about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He had a really famous TED talk about this. And then he ended up selling Joie de Vie, which was the largest boutique hotel firm, I think, either in the country or in California. And then he ends up working for Brian Chesky and the Airbnb guys. And, to your point, becomes the modern elder of Airbnb, which we all know where that ends up. This is early. This is like 2011 before they were anybody. And now they're a big deal, right? So you got it. Did you he's like, hey, I want to start this academy for people midlife that are going through this midlife change. And, he and I talked about, he came on the show 3 years ago when I first started the show, and I had met him in 2009. So we had never really talked since then, but Tony Lilios, a mutual friend of ours, introduced me to Chip. And so I would love to hear, how does one go from a hotelier to this, I guess there's a hotel aspect to MEA, but how did you and was your hotel in Todos Santos where you were? Or you said it was in Pescadero? Or sorry, I forgot the hotel you were at before MEA came into the picture.
I actually was part of a number of different hotels. The first one that I helped open, and none of them were mine, to be clear. I was opening hotels for other people. First one was in Pescadero, and then where I met Chip, I'd gone on to open a hotel in Todos Santos called Hotel Casa Tota, which was just a little project that was done by the GM who had built the first hotel, Rancho Pescadero.
Got it.
And what I wanted was I wanted a blank canvas. I wanted to know if I was actually good at opening hotels or if we just had a lot of money to throw at the first one and a great location. And, was it a perfect storm or was I actually good at this like kind of culture creation and building staff and concepts? And so we did Casa Tota for a year. While I was at Casa Tota, Chip tried to book at the first hotel and they were sold out. Good friend of mine named Carla, who was still at Rancho Pescadero, said, Christine's gone on to do a new project. Why don't you try to find her? So he reached out to me at Casa Tota. We connected. He ended up coming to Todos Santos. And now MEA is the third project that we've actually done together. So we worked on a few different things before MEA. And when he had the concept of MEA, here I am. I'd been in Mexico launching things for about 8 years, I guess, at that point. More than that, almost 10 years, and I was his first phone call, which I will always feel flattered about. And he told me
That's
the
so
concept, cool. And there we went. And then my first phone call was to Chef Tony Peralta, who I continue to work with today and who is hopefully coming up to Santa Fe to launch our food up here. He is one of the most beloved staff members at MEA. To your point about us being hoteliers first, we didn't come out of personal growth world, although Chip had a relationship with Esalen. We came out of hospitality. And so while we are doing deep work at MEA, it's rooted in like luxury hospitality.
Yeah, that's so cool. And obviously Chip has that background too, right? So like you guys are all like, there's this, I wish I'm blanking. So my wife's aunt, she worked at, did you remember the movie? Oh man, it's Sofia Coppola did the movie with Bill Murray in Japan.
Yes.
Remember this famous, famous movie?
Yes.
Gosh, I'm blanking on the name of it, but there's a hotel that they're in, and it's a super famous hotel in Tokyo. So, and I'm blanking on the name of the hotel, but if I said it, you'd know it. I think it's like the Intercontinental or something like that. So my wife's aunt worked there, and when she was like, this is in the probably early '90s, late '80s, right out of college, and she's like in Japan, like they have like, and I'm blanking on the word, but there's like a word for hospitality where it's like give somebody something that they don't know they want, but they will end up wanting, right? So it's like being ahead of, like one step ahead of your guest, right? Yeah. And so I think there is something magical about great, like this, like hotel experience and having people take care of you, I guess. I mean, is that, do you think that's a big part of your guys' culture at MEA or like
Absolutely.
Your perspective?
I mean, I think it's all about care. It's all about like a genuine hospitality from the heart. For me, it really, really starts with the staff, right? Like our staff is our first guest. We have to take great care of them. I want to take great care of them because they're the ones providing the experience for our guests. So really for me, it's all about the staff. I love what MEA has unleashed in the world. I love the community. This past weekend, Darius, we had 300 people come to Santa Fe for our reunion. And we have over 300 graduates at this point from 42 countries. And I think the reason that it's so sticky, the reason that this sense of community is so intense starts with the experience in Baja. And that's provided by our staff because they genuinely show up. They genuinely show up every single day. And I think it's a job, we've endeavored to create a job in Pescadero that is dignified and pays hopefully outrageously. And, people love to come to every single day because when they love to come to work, they love our guests.
What do you? So two things there. Like Mercedes calls it customer one, right? That your team is your first customer. I'm a firm believer in that too. And I'm like, look, if I want a client to have a good experience, then my team has to have a good experience because my customer's experience is a direct reflection of my team's experience. But going to the experience at MEA, I guess, first of all, who do you think, like when you start thinking of who like obviously it's for midlife. It's this place for people to come and learn about how to experience midlife and to, take this next part of their life and do it even better, right? And maybe I'm not saying it the right way, but like when you start thinking about this loyal alumni group that's coming to MEA, like who's your ideal avatar? Who's this for? Like someone that's listening that's like, what is that? Maybe I should do it. I don't know. Like who's the avatar that's like, man, if you are this, you should come check this out.
If I might backtrack a little bit, when we started, we were really focused on this midlife, and we thought it would be, 45 to 65 and people in transition. We've had people from 28 to 92 come. So I think it's more of like a psychographic than a midlife. It's about transition, and it's about wanting to move into that second phase or that second adulthood with intentionality and community. Our average guest is 54 years old, has had a career, but we've given out over $2 million in financial aid. 30% of our seats in Baja are reserved for people who are coming on scholarships, because again, really early, we discovered the power of community, and having a lot of diverse viewpoints in the room is the thing, right? Is the thing that makes it click. So I think anybody who is interested in learning tools and finding the community to enter that second half of adulthood with intentionality, curiosity, and joy should come. Really.
I love that.
Yeah.
you don't know this. I got referred to MEA. Did I tell you that story?
No, tell me the story.
I'm gonna tell you the 45-second version, just out of respect for, because we're running over here, and I want to respect your time. So my life imploded hard like 4 years ago, 2019. I was like midlife. I didn't want to be CEO of my company anymore, and I'm not a quitter, and I didn't want to know what to do, and so I had this like moment where I was in my car, and I'm like, I'm quitting, and I was like, what? And I like said it out loud to myself. By myself, and like I threw it up, and I was like, whoa, it's like you throw up, you're like, what the hell did that come from? And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I fucking just said that. And then I toughed it out for like 9 months or 11 months actually, and then I quit. And then I went, and I was like in a dark place, and I was not doing well. And so my really good friend Jeff Shocks, his wife Kate, who's my wife, ironically enough, my wife and her met when they were 18, backpacking through Mexico for a year, in the early 90s. And so she's like, Darius should go check out this thing called the Modern Elder Academy. This is in 2020. Like, it was like January of 20. And I'm like, I don't want to get coached by anybody. Fuck that. And so I didn't do anything with it, but that was the first time I had heard of it. And then have since, obviously talked to Chip about it, and we have Shelly Paxton in common, and I know that she spent time down there. But I've heard just absolutely amazing things about it, and I know a lot of people now have gone down there. Our mutual friend Tony Lilios is organizing a trip. I might try to make that trip with him.
Please come.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make it happen. So that was my one experience with MEA, but I wanted to go a different direction just because we're kind of nearing the end of the show, and I know you guys are opening this new campus in Santa Fe, right? So if you don't mind, like, I know you've now since moved from Todos Santos area to Santa Fe. You're building out this academy or this new campus there. Tell us a little bit about that, and then I have one pointed question for you about that, and then I want to get to our greatness question.
Excellent. But I want to backtrack just a little bit, because you said something about coaching, and I share that resistance, that kind of coaching resistance. Not as much now as I did at the beginning of this 5-year journey. We have this third co-founder. His name is Jeff Hamaway, and he's absolutely like brilliant and luminous. And one of the earliest kind of tweaks he made to our business model was this idea that wisdom is not taught, that it's shared. And again, it goes back to this idea of being in the room with this incredible collection of experienced and sophisticated and wildly diverse people in the room and sharing what you know, right? So it again, it's not about coming and being coached. It's not about us having the answers and telling you what you're going to do and what your next steps are, but putting you in like the right the right soup with the right ingredients to kind of process yourself. So, your question was about Santa Fe and what we're doing here.
Yeah. And I appreciate what you just said. I was in the front. I had done a ton of coaching at that point, and I'm like, and I was just burnt on it, and I'm like, I got to figure this out for myself. Which that probably, look, like obviously the timing wasn't great because it's right when COVID happened, but yeah, I'm in a bunch of CEO groups, and it's all about peer-to-peer learning and learning from each other's experiences.
Right.
That's changed my life in ways I can't even explain. But yeah, let's talk about Santa Fe. I know we're getting towards the end of the show here. I want to respect your time and get you out of here on time.
So Santa Fe, we'll be opening in almost exactly a year's time on the Rising Circle Ranch, which is our 2,500 acre ranch about 25 minutes south of the Santa Fe Plaza. And it's just so stunningly beautiful. So a place to go and immerse. We'll be able to have 2 different cohorts going at a time in the 2 different houses on the campus. There'll be a big equine component. Obviously on that kind of space, 2,500 acres, you can go deep, you can find quiet. So we'll have that project. And then sometime after that, we'll be opening our in-town campus as well. That's on the site of a former Catholic retreat center. So we've got all kinds of things working here in Santa Fe. And we also are doing regenerative communities. So we, to the point of listening to your guests, we had people telling us over and over and over again, Darius, that they did not want to leave at the end of the week, that they wanted to live this way. So we ran a pilot kind of in Baja called Baja Sage. That's a regenerative community. It's 26 residential units around a regenerative farm. And it's kind of like intentional community light, right? It's how do we want to live together but have a lot of privacy? So we did that in Baja. COVID hit. We thought, oh shit, we're fucked. And it sold out before we ever could build a website.
Wow.
And we'll be doing regenerative communities here in Santa Fe eventually as well. We're trying to pace in a really smart way so that we can deliver, beautiful experiences and quality the whole way. So we'll be rolling those out slowly, but it's all coming. Awesome.
Yeah. I was gonna bash on millennials for a hot second here, but I'm not gonna go there. My millennial friends know that I like to bash on them. I was like, hey, do you think the millennials are going to work as hard as your Mexicanos and Todos Santos? Like, are they going to appreciate the job and give the same experience? Are you going to demand that of them since you're the jefe?
You know what? I feel like when you create jobs and culture that really honor people, they show the fuck up, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to be the employer of choice in New Mexico. I just do. I want us to be the place that has a waiting list to get a job because it's so good to be here. And we're so fair and generous and kind. And that it's an inspiring place to work.
Yeah.
So no, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. I knew that was the answer. I just wanted to bash on millennials. It was a rhetorical question. So let's go to the greatness question, and we'll plug a little bit of MEA, and we'll get you out of here. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the greatness question here at the Greatness Machine, and I'm going to go for it. So, what is the number one barrier to creating greatness that you've overcome in your life, and how did you overcome it?
Oh my goodness. I think that's an evolutionary question for me, right? I think I'm probably my own biggest obstacle. I just deal with imposter syndrome all the time. Like, who am I to be doing this work? Who am I to push back on Chip? And I do have great ideas. I bring a lot of value. And so I think my biggest obstacle is me. Christine Sperber is my biggest obstacle. And I'm trying every day to learn and get better and be confident,
Yeah. Well, you take that imposter syndrome and throw it out because you're a boss lady, man. Like I'm like, dude, you should push back on Chip every chance you get.
I'll tell him you said that.
Yeah, tell him. Darius said like I need to challenge you more. No, you know what? I realized like I don't have that. I mean, I've always been like, fuck it, I'm just gonna tell them what I think, and if they don't like it, they can go pound sand. But I think that look, you have experience, right? So it's like you've been on this planet for a minute and you've had some cool experiences and you're a respectful human. So I love hearing that. It just means that you're thoughtful and you care. But but I think you need it. I think you need to own it because you're a badass. There's no question about that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on the show and just spending time with us and teaching us all about all the amazingness and greatness that you're doing. Do you mind doing a little plugging of the MEA and any other stuff you want to promote? And we'll get you out of here.
I would love to promote MEA because for 5.5 years, I've seen it make a deep difference in people's lives. So it feels good to stand behind it and spread the word. ModernElderAcademy.com. You can find out about our in-person workshops in Baja. You can find out about our online if you don't want to travel or you want to do a kind of longer wavelength learning with us. We've got 6 and 8 week courses online with the absolutely transformative Carrie Cardinale. She is world-class educator, online educator. I can't believe that we get to have her on our team. So find us, come down, spend time with us, either in Mexico or online, or wait till we're in Santa Fe, but we would love to have you. And again, I've just seen it work over and over again.
All right. How's that? Greatness. I loved it. Greatness Machine peeps. You heard it here. ModernElderAcademy.com. We'll put that in the show notes. Christine Sperber, you're a badass. Appreciate you so much. So glad that we've gotten to become homies. I can't wait to come hang out with you in Santa Fe. And man, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
And I want you to make pizza for me sometime, please, because I know that's your thing.
Yeah, it is. And you got to come to Austin for that, though. So
I will.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here. It's a really kind of all-star cast that you've had on, and that imposter syndrome is like, wow, I get to be on the greatness machine with Darius. Amazing.
You are part of the greatness, that's for sure. With that said, guys, appreciate you so much. Share this. People, we as leaders are givers. Share this with the people who need to hear it. Until next time, peace out. We love you. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.